What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, joined once again by my guy Morgan Cannon, and with our very special guest here, Ryan Matthews is here, gracing us with his beautiful presence on a really interesting Monday morning or Monday afternoon, because we have got some breaking news, guys, and the type of news that you don't really want to hear going into a 2025 season, but we'll just jump right into it. The Lions have been notified that All-Pro center Frank Ragnow is retiring from the NFL at the age of 29. I'll start, at least from my perspective, this was a little bit of a shock. I did a video just a couple days ago talking about, obviously there was that report that was out that Frank was looking for a new contract. And I was pretty excited about the thought that Frank wanted more money and that he wanted more years. Like, this means that Frank's probably going to stick around. But that does not seem to be the case with the news of his retirement. Ryan, I'm going to kick it over to you right away, but just what were your initial reactions once this news kind of broke?
I mean, you can't be anything less than upset, I guess, or bummed. I think bummed was the right way to describe it, because I think we know where Frank's priorities lie, and Frank has been very clear that family is very important to him. And this is a guy who has battled through so much adversity in terms of injury, and he's really put it all on the line for the Detroit Lions for so many years. So, you know, there was the inkling of, okay, maybe early retirement after that NFC Championship game back in 2023. You know, played last season, right? So I think this was it was still shocking, right? So I mean, bummed, shocked. You didn't really have it on your radar until he didn't show up to OTAs. But then again, all of us are thinking, what, Morgan? All of us are thinking maybe like injury maintenance. He's a veteran. He'll be fine. But I think at the end of the day, you're bummed, you're shocked, and you're kind of wondering where the Lions go from here now, because he's a huge, huge piece and a big loss along the interior of that offensive line.
And Frank's dealt with a bunch of things, like going back to he had the inoperable toe that just like through the years, right? He had the 2021, his season ended early, had the surgery. And that thing it's not going to go away. I don't know what year he said that. And then to Ryan's point, it was after the NFC Championship game in 2023 when he basically was like contemplating with like the media, like, yeah, I'm going to see how I feel from here. And that was 2 years ago. So it all adds up, man. And it shocked me. But then I guess once I got away from the initial feeling, I guess it really shouldn't shock us. But I don't know. Thought we had a few more years, right, Miko?
Yeah, I think if anything, I think we're all in agreement, whether it's shocked or bummed, that I think the one thing that this news does is kind of confirm the things that we already knew. Like, to Ryan's point, we first and foremost understand like Frank's character and like how important football was to him. But in the grand scheme of things, like he kind of even says in his Instagram post where he kind of points to, like, he wants to be able to prioritize his body. He wants to be able to prioritize his family. I think that is kind of a testament to that. But I think also with a retirement this early, and I think whether it's Frank Ragnow, Calvin Johnson, any other player that has retired before 30 that was like, quote unquote, in the prime of their career, you can normally look and understand that like maybe the toll that was being put on their body was just greater than anybody ever realized. And I think that's really the case here when it comes down to Frank.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of want to go back and talk about, I mean, he started that, it's called the Grief Club of Minnesota for families and young kids and teens who have lost a parent or a loved one and are dealing with grief. And Frank is somebody who lost his father when he was just 20 years old from a sudden heart attack. So like, family means an awful lot to Frank. You can hear that through the Instagram post that he had where he said, I've tried to convince myself that I'm feeling good, but I'm not. And it's time to prioritize my health and my family's future. So, when the body says it can't go any longer, and when you know that family means an awful lot to you, it's a pretty easy decision that I don't think dollars really matter all that much to Frank Ragnow. I mean, he got paid handsomely as a center in the NFL. Like, he got a really big extension when he signed it back in, was it 2021?
I think so, 2021, yeah.
I think Frank has just enough money to fish until his heart's content and spend time with, and he has one kid and he has another kid on the way. So, I mean, that's important to him. And at 29 years old, I think a lot of people immediately see that and they think of the Lions of yesteryear who walked away from the game of football early on, whether it's Barry or it's Calvin. And you can add Frank to this list now, but it's a different set of circumstances. right? It's a very different set of circumstances.
I love that you made that comparison because if you flipped him, like if you put Calvin right now, like 2015 Calvin on this year, like he's like, yeah, I'll thug it out and play the X for this team, a couple more, see if I can't get a ring, because
Yeah.
just because it's different circumstances, like Ryan said, but same when it comes to like doing your job on a daily basis hurts, man. Like I, in a different light, I've been there where I'm like, yeah, I can't do this no more, man. So I had to, you pivot. But like with Frank, I would imagine I try to like take, step into his shoes. He's about to have his second baby, like Ryan said, and he's like, all right, I got not even 2 months till I got a report for camp. Now I'm looking at the calendar and I'm like, oh my, and if he's still like, my body is still like chewed from 2024, you just have to do what's right for your family in the long term. And I'm so glad you brought up like what his like off the field passions are, Ryan, like with doing things for like youth that have lost their parents early. But yeah, I imagine he'll just fish, chill, keep doing his charities, probably get more involved with it now that he's not, professional football player anymore. So I can see him doing all of that. And I hope he enjoys it, man, because he's a grade A human being, like 100%.
Grizzly Man Outdoors should be like national media
Popping
consumption.
Off. Yeah, we got to link them.
By the time.
Link below.
Right. But with that said, obviously we are definitely wishing Frank well in his retirement. But at the same time, that does leave a void for the Detroit Lions, Ryan, like you kind of mentioned. So, Morgan, I'll start with you first. How do you kind of foresee the Lions trying to fill that void at center? Because like I even pointed out in my video, like that's not an easy ask. Like you're talking about replacing a 3-time All-Pro and 4-time Pro Bowler kind of at the drop of a hat, right?
Yeah, no doubt. It's a huge void, and don't let anyone like tell you any different. But I keep thinking like they had to have known like this was a possibility. Like Frank and Dan probably had like at some point, this is conjecture here, but like if they did have some kind of dialogue, because you look at that draft class now and you're like, okay, this makes a little more sense with Ratledge, with Frazier, just knowing like, it's a possibility, maybe not like a definite thing, but maybe they had some kind of conversation. And I keep going back and forth, man. Like, do you guys think they'd be better off with Graham at right guard and plug Ratledge in at center? They had been working him there, but we all just were like, oh, it's because Frank is letting his body heal. They're just going to get him some reps there, cross-train, cool. Or do we think you put Graham at center and plug Ratledge in at right guard? That's kind of how I go back and forth with it. But and I don't know, maybe Miles Frazier pushes things, but what do y'all think? I don't know. Keep going back and forth.
I'm a big fan of Graham just sliding over to center, right? I mean, especially if we're talking about like going into the season, Graham has much more experience at playing center, and I would much rather have that veteran experience at such a pivotal position when you talk about being able to communicate across the rest of the offensive line and making sure that everyone's on the same page. Tate is already going to have to learn the position, but to give him a position that he has to learn as well as give him that level of responsibility, I think is a lot to ask for of a rookie. I think he has the makeup to be that player down the line, but I think that's something that you would love to at least give yourself a year buffer and allow Graham to kind of be that stopgap, and then allow Tate to kind of learn under Graham throughout the rest of the 2025 season. But Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of like the blueprint, right? It's pretty interesting that things have come full circle for Graham Glasgow, because he was the team's starting center in Frank's rookie season, where Frank was playing guard and Graham was playing center. And then when Graham signed a contract to go play in Denver, it was Frank Ragnow's time. The plan was always to have Frank Ragnow be a center in the NFL, but that's how they brought him along, because they had the opportunity to have Graham there. So I think what you're saying, Miko, and what you're saying, Morgan, with the Tate Ratledge stuff, you would want a veteran there. I think you would want Graham in the middle, somebody who you can trust and, knows the position well and has played the position for a long time. It's just, I think Graham is better utilized as a guard at this point in his career. And I'm not saying that I don't want Graham to be the starting center, but this is, all the pieces as they've fallen. This is where the Detroit Lions are at, right? Like, they have some really tough decisions to make now, but I think they have plenty of runway with training camp. They have. The other thing that I think is really interesting is that, the Lions really attacked the interior offensive line position heavy in the draft, right? I mean, they drafted Ratledge, they drafted Miles Frazier. Graham seems like the easiest. Put him at center and then figure it out from there. You have Mahogany. You have a lot of players. Like, you have a lot of pieces. It's just the fit is, it's it's kind of all of a sudden, you know what I mean? And I think that's the thought process that I have when I think about, okay, if this was truly a contract dispute, if this was really about money with Frank Ragnow, I think the Lions would rather have the all-pro center in the middle of the line and pay him, I don't know, whatever you need, Frank, whatever you need for night crawlers and bait and tackle and, to take your kids on vacations, like whatever, we'll take care of you because this isn't a problem that we want to deal with right now. So I don't know. I just kind of want to underscore that because in my opinion, I don't think that has anything to do with it. So in the here and now, like, do you guys think that you want Graham Glasgow week 1 starting center? So then what do you do at both those guard positions now? Like, is it Mahogany or is it whoever really kind of balls out in training camp?
This is why I keep going back and forth because in my opinion, I like the trenches, but with Graham at center, even if his play strength has deteriorated a little bit from early, 2021, 2022, whatever, center, that's a little more tolerable just because you're at the pivot. A lot of the times you can get help. Whereas if, I don't know, and then plug in Mahogany at left guard and Ratledge at right guard and away you go. That's like one way I think about it. But then I think about it too. I'm like, is he just better? Put him at right guard next to Panay. And you know what I mean? I could see that train of thought too. So like Ryan said, I'm glad they have some runway. And then Miles Frazier's probably sitting somewhere like, yo, I could maybe play somewhere too. So they have a lot of options. And like Ryan said, I'm glad they went heavy with the interior offensive line and it's looking like a really good decision, especially now. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Nico? Like, I don't know. It's a toss-up.
I think one thing that we do know for sure, right, is that the best players are going to play, right? Whatever that combination is, like that's what Dan and this coaching staff is going to roll with. But to answer Ryan's question directly, like I am a big fan of just having Graham be there, like I said, for that veteran presence, because the likelihood that you could have either 2 rookies starting at guard, if we're talking about Miles Frazier and Tate Ratledge, or even a rookie and a second-year player in either Ratledge or Mahogany, still kind of makes me a little nervous, right? Obviously, you have great veterans at the tackle spots, so that's great, right? Panay and Decker are obviously going to do their jobs at a high level. I just would love to have that experience. But like I said at the top of this as well, like I still think the best players are going to play. So if Tate is able to pick up center really well and they feel really confident about him, well then great. Then it just continues to be what it was already going to be leading into training camp, which is it's going to be a fight at the guard spots. And I think Christian Mahogany, now that he actually has a little bit more of an easier runway to that starting spot, might be able to get it. But, Morgan, you and I looked at the film on Miles Frazier, and he looks like he's someone that could very much compete for a starting spot as well.
I'm going to pivot to Ryan because I know this is going to be, he made this point earlier in Slack, but what do I always talk about, Miko? Keeping Jared Goff's front porch clean. That's the easiest way to make sure this offense keeps on ticking the way it's supposed to tick. And I think that has to take precedence over even like just mashing people in the run. You got Panay, you got some tight ends that can block. You can scheme things up and you'll make it work. I'm not saying we're abandoning run blocking or anything like that in lieu of pass blocking, but it's got to be about keeping Goff's front porch clean, right, Ryan?
Yeah, it's really important, right? There's so many examples you can go back and think to. 2022 Thanksgiving against the Buffalo Bills, the Lions were down in the middle of their offense, and they had Awashika and man, I don't know. There was another guard that was playing that game too that was not a starter, and it was no bueno. And then 2023, you think about week 8 versus the Raiders. It was a Monday Night Football game. That game was mostly like a running game, right? Like they ran the ball, I think like 40 something times in that game.
Jameer went off. I remember that one.
Yep. Big Jameer game, but it was like Colby Sorsdal. It was Awashika. It was a little bit of Dan Skipper at guard. And then the game that I always come back to, because it was the game that really soured me in 2023 before the Lions reached the playoffs, but just that lowly Bears team going into Chicago. Frank Ragnow didn't play in that game, and it was a nightmare. And I'm not saying that that's a unique Jared Goff thing. I totally agree with you guys. Like, it is more important for a guy who isn't as mobile like Jared Goff to make sure that interior pressure isn't, it's not coming like a bat out of hell. But I think just that's such an important game-breaking trait, right? We talk about like the Chris Jones, we talk about the Aaron Donalds of the past, right? Who those guys are game wreckers, and the Lions need to make sure that they have this solidified because that can really unpin a lot. And holy smokes, John Morton, like, welcome to being the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. I think this it changes the complexity of a lot of things. It changes what you're able to do. I mean, Morgan, you watch an awful lot of film, and I know you like watching the offensive line. There's just certain things they did with Frank where, I mean, they're pulling the center, right? They're doing super unique things with Frank, and it's like, it's just not a one-to-one. So it's going to be a unique challenge. I think I look at, it's funny how we are kind of like zeroed in on, all right, like Miles Frazier and Tate Ratledge and, some of those guys. I think that, not saying that these guys really have a chance of being a starter, but I'm interested to see how they think of Netane Muti. Like, he's a guy who got injured in training camp last year, but they kept him around. I know Michael Neese has played a lot in the preseason, and Kingsley Iguakin, that's another guy those guys are mostly centers. That's the unique situation the Lions are in right now, though. Like, they have Graham, who's like a part-time center, hasn't really played center at a starting, in a starting capacity since, I mean, goodness gracious, that was
2020.
I mean, 2020. Yeah, I mean, 2018 with Detroit, and then in 2022, his final year in Denver, he played more at center than he did at guard. But it's almost like I want the more athletic guy playing left guard. I want somebody more athletic next to Taylor, and then I can trust Panay to kind of keep stuff
Smooth
afloat on
up.
the right side, right? Like that's I guess my kind of thought process. But yeah, it's a really tough spot I think the Lions are in right now. And I hope they figure it out, because it's going to be essential to them being as good on offense as they were a year ago.
Yeah, Miko, I wanted to ask you, what do you think was Ratledge's best trait when we watched his Georgia tape? Because for me, it was his ability to anchor and just wall off dudes in the pass pro. Like, we have some questions about him as a run blocker if it's not in a phone booth, even though he's really athletic. But what did you think about, like, I do think he could be a ready-made, like a really good pass blocker in the NFL. Not Frank Ragnow level, because that's going to be hard to do in year one, but he could be a really good pass blocker right away.
No, absolutely. My only concern with Tate as potentially a center was, like, one thing that we pointed out in tape was that he doesn't operate in space well. So, like, my concern is that if he gets kind of just like looking around for work, that he's just not going to really get kind of taken advantage of, or he will get taken advantage of in those situations. But again, that's coaching. That's what you have Hank Fraley there for. And that's something that you can definitely coach up his game with. I will say this, and we can kind of move on to the next question. Whoever they put at center and whoever they put at right guard, as long as you don't cost Panay the offensive lineman award, yes. I don't care who you are. You just got to make Panay's life extremely easy so that he can win that award in his first year being introduced into the NFL. But Ryan, you were kind of already tiptoeing around this, but I think it's something that we do have to talk about. I think it's something that's going to be on every Lions fan's mind, which is the concern level for this offensive line now that Frank isn't going to be there. Because for the last few years, we've been able to talk about how this is either the best, second best, top three offensive line units in the NFL. And you take away someone that is as accomplished and as talented as we've been talking about that Frank is, what does this do for your concern level for this offensive line going forward?
By far and away, he was for sure the second best piece on this offensive line. And the only reason he was the second best piece is because there's an alien that plays right tackle. It's a huge, huge undertaking to try to replace Frank Ragnow. And I don't know necessarily where it knocks them down, but it 100% knocks them down a peg or two or three or four. Like I'd have to review some of the offensive lines in the NFL to refamiliarize myself, but I'm not saying it doesn't make it a strength of this team, because it undoubtedly has to be in order for this offense to be successful. Like, if you want to run the football, if you want a guy to be an extension of Jared Goff in terms of diagnosing stuff pre-snap, like, it's a very critical position, and it means a lot. It means a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it too, man. Like, if you had to 1 to 10, probably like at a 5, 6, like, it's because you still do have Panay, you have Decker. Hopefully he can, continue to play well. And he has as a pass protector, especially, because that's my biggest thing. Like, at this point, I feel good enough with Jameer and David Montgomery. And obviously it all starts up front, like in the trenches, but you still have Panay. You still have, like, I'm so high on Mahogany. I think that's probably why I'm a little less, because you do have that piece, like y'all are talking about, that athletic guy that can mash people in space and in a phone booth in Mahogany. But yeah, you're gonna need young guys to play well right away. Ratledge, whether it's Ratledge, I expect it from him because they traded up for him. They prioritized him. If you get something from Frazier right away, terrific, man. If we haven't mentioned his name yet, but if Manu can operate a guard, if he can, Manu can play this year. I know I'm getting pie in the sky here.
Mm-hmm.
Then this could get really interesting. You know what I mean? If he has taken steps to where he can get on, or at least be serviceable depth, like a guard or tackle, you're in a better spot. But at any rate, you're losing he's been an All-Pro 2 times. I want to say 2 times. So 3 times. Yeah. So yeah, it's tough no matter how you slice it. And until we see how they operate with live bullets like week 1, it's going to be a lot of guessing.
It's a good thing that you get a couple of joint practices with different teams, right, Miko?
True.
That's going to be really valuable.
Yeah, I think that's a great asset to have. And then, like you were pointing out earlier, right? Like the fact that they do have a good amount of guys to try to figure out what is the best combination. Like we did, we spent a lot of time talking about Ratledge. We spent a good amount of time talking about Frazier. And you just brought up Manu, but there are a lot of viable options that the Lions have. And I think, like you said, whatever they are expecting their center to do, whether it's be super athletic, whether it's just be able to be a good communicator, whatever the case may be, I think you have enough guys in the building to be able to figure out what that best combination is. And so, Morgan, to kind of, piggyback off you, if I were to put this on a scale of 1 to 10, it is for me about a 6, because I think what this Lions team does from an offensive standpoint does go beyond just one player, even along that offensive line. Obviously, having Frank there makes it that much easier to rely on the entire unit. But everything that they do from an offensive standpoint relies on everyone doing their job. And so whoever it is playing center or whoever it is playing either of the guard spots, you just have to be able to do your job at a high level because you have enough talent at the quarterback position, at the running back positions, tight end, receivers. You have enough there to make everything still go forward at a really high level. Everyone just has to be keyed in on what they are supposed to do. And Ryan, that's something that I kind of expect Dan Campbell, Hank Fraley, and John Morton to kind of continue to preach to this entire offense going into training camp and the rest of OTAs.
Yeah, if I were to put it on a 1 to 10 scale, I think I'd be a little bit higher than you guys. I think I'd be at like a hard 7, maybe like a light 8. But could you imagine where we would be if Hank Fraley wasn't still the offensive line coach? That would be that's what is preventing me from making this like a 9 or a 10. It helps soften the blow for sure. So I think the one thing that's interesting to point out though is Miles Frazier is a guy who's played a lot of football. Yeah. He has over 3,200 snaps in his college career versus like Tate Ratledge, who's no slouch and has played an awful lot too, but he only has like 2,000 snaps. And again, none of these guys have played center. I mean, we've heard of Ratledge, getting some work at OTAs, but they have guys who have a lot of experience, like Frazier. I mean, I know Mahogany only has the handful of games in the NFL so far, but that's a guy who played an awful lot in college. They have a lot of experience, and they have a lot of guys, and they've invested a lot, to your point, Miko. It's just the musical chairs, right? And I hope that when the music stops, they have their center that they feel comfortable with, and they have their guards to keep Jared Goff operating on time.
Didn't Dan have that quote about Glasgow? I saw it on Twitter today at some point, but it was essentially saying, Graham's a good center. He can play center. And, I'm like, okay, so that, reading that and the joint practices will be huge. That's a great point, Ryan. Just being able to can't wait to read about that because you gotta keep Goff clean, man. That's my biggest thing. I know Ryan feels the same way too, and got to.
Yeah, absolutely. So one last thing before we get up out of here. Again, with this, with us kind of using this as a platform for us to say our final kind of goodbyes to Frank Ragnow, even though none of us have probably gotten to meet him personally, I want to give you guys an opportunity just to kind of, if you have one, rap about your favorite Frank Ragnow memory. Could be from a game, a press conference, anything.
Man, I have mine, Morgan, if you want me to go first.
Yeah, go ahead. I didn't want to go to the cliche one.
Boy, then I'm worried I'm going to do the cliche one, but I hope I'm not doing the cliche one.
You're not, I bet.
My moment is the NFC divisional round against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Frank Ragnow's beat to hell. He's playing in the game through, I mean, he had the sprained knee and ankle. It's 4th and 1. Lions got to have it. Goal line call. They run a play right behind Frank Ragnow, who's going up against Vita Vea, who's one of the best interior defensive linemen in all of football, a massive mountain of a human being. Craig Reynolds is in the game on accident because they didn't get the right personnel in the game. Doesn't matter. Frank Ragnow just moves Vita Vea just enough to give Craig enough wiggle room to get into the end zone on 4th and 1 in like one of the most important situations. I mean, it was awesome. Like that's a moment that'll always stick out to me, especially Dan talking about it post game. You hear about, Frank went through all that, and then he still played the following week in the NFC Championship game, like sprained knee, ankle, and all. Like, yeah, that's the quintessential, like, that guy laid it on the line all the time, because Morgan's going to have another moment where the guy probably played through some freakish injury, right?
Oh, that was a great call, honestly, because that's one I didn't think of right away. I went to the fractured throat. I'm going to be cliche, man. Man played through
Nobody heard of that.
Throat, dog.
Nobody heard of that before.
That's when I read it, I was like, but what do you mean? You know what I mean? Like, I was like, what do you mean? And then they talked about it. Remember, like it was Goff when he was like, he had to do all the, like, Frank couldn't do any calls anymore. Was it, what year was that?
Oh, that was early.
Campbell.
It was early Campbell. So
Early
it might have been 21 or 22. Yeah.
And like the record was probably real bad. And like, you know what? He's like, just went up to Goff. I can just imagine, like, just whispering to him. Like, I'm like, yo, it just geeks me out. But that's the type of dude Frank is. Yeah. What about you, Miko?
I'm actually going to take something that's not on the field. I've always enjoyed seeing Frank Ragnow talk to the media and the way he interacted with his teammates. And it was always just like, this is a really violent sport that these guys play, right? And offensive linemen, it's like between offensive linemen and defensive linemen, it seems like you have to be some of like the nastiest, meanest people. And Frank, every time he got to the podium, every time he was mic'd up, like it was just like, that dude seems way too nice to be playing football, right? And so like, that's why for me, like when we talk about being bummed or being shocked or even just being saddened by him retiring, like I'm going to miss that from him, seeing that part of that element of football, because he truly was somebody that cared a lot about his teammates, about the sport that he played, and yeah, that's something that I know for personally as a fan that I'm going to miss.
Quintessential Midwesterner, right, Ryan? Just going to be in Minnesota, back like some cool lakefront property, and he'll be watching. I guarantee you he'll watch the Lions, because he's like all these dudes. Like think about how much he's bled with guys like Decker and Ragnow. So, yeah, I think he'll be tapping in. What about you, Ryan? You think he's just going to move back to Minnesota, fish, chill?
I mean, he's going to be a dad. Well, that's going to be his full-time job now, which I'm excited for him to do that, because like you said at the top, Morgan, like the guy is aces, like just like the consummate professional, the exact kind of teammate that you would want for the Detroit Lions. I mean, remember that moment, I think, and that's another moment that kind of stands out is, Taylor Decker getting so emotional talking about Frank Ragnow in the locker room after that Bucs game. So that's, I don't know, like you never heard a single bad thing about Frank Ragnow.
Everybody loves Frank, man. That's a great point.
He's truly like, if you're to compare him to like another Detroit athlete, he's just like Nick Lidstrom. You know what I mean? Like you never heard a bad thing about Nick Lidstrom, was steady as steady could be, deserved, I think, again, like Nick Lidstrom, deserved so much more recognition than he truly got, because he just played the game like so sound and so steady. What was the stat? Like, I mean, how many snaps did Frank play? Like, and he only gave up, was it 5 sacks that he was ever credited giving up? Like, he logged like over like 3,000. Like it was crazy. Like in terms of pass blocking snaps, like I don't know. Like just love the guy. I actually looked it up. It was 2020.
Okay. Ooh.
It was the last Matthew Stafford season when he fractured. Yeah, when he fractured his throat. But
that makes sense, because I remember Stafford talking about it now.
Yeah. I mean, over 4,000 pass blocking snaps and only gave up 10 sacks in according to PFF. So, and I know Morgan's going to double check those numbers.
I'll leave him. I'll let him have sacks, bro. Don't even get me started. I'm excited for.
I was going to say, that's a conversation for another day.
For Frank, I do think he's going to be like Joe Thomas, bro. I think he's going to lose like a bunch of weight, like look really good, like really quick. Like, cause I don't think he's one of those guys that just walks around at like 310 or 350, whatever he plays at. I think he's going to lose weight, and that'll help him feel a little bit better too, like right away, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
For you, Frank.
Well, again, appreciate you guys jumping on to do this video. Again, a salute to Frank Ragnow, an amazing career here in Detroit. Again, so many great moments. And again, this team, this offensive line wouldn't have been something that we could have praised as highly as we've been praising them without him being a part of it. So again, good luck to him in retirement. He's definitely deserved it. And again, like we said at the top of this video, like we have no doubt that that there's more incredible things that he's going to be doing in retirement. So like always, guys, if you are looking for any more additional Lions content or any additional news about Frank Ragnow and his retirement, you can always check out prideofdetroit.com. There are new articles being put up there all the time. And if you want to stay locked into any of the video content that we're doing over here on YouTube, all you got to do is hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and that's going to make it that much easier for you to find our video content whenever we decide to publish new videos or go live over here on YouTube. But with that said, I'm Miko, he's Ryan, he's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll see you guys in the next one.